Yo, what is up guys? My name is Russ and today I'm going to bring you a guide on how to complete the Assassination Mage Tower in patch 9.1.5 of Shadowlands. I'm going to be doing this without any kind of cheese gear, so no crazy sockets that you have to farm, no crazy consumables that you have to go and get, and no kind of like cheese strats. I've now made a video guide for all three of the rogue specs, so if you're interested in trying any of the others, I'll leave links down below in the description. There's also a link to my stream down there where I did all of these live. So if you have any questions or just generally interested in becoming more educated in WoW or being entertained, then do feel free to swing by the stream, throw me a follow, all that good stuff. And I hope to see you there. And also, if you feel like you need an extra hand with these challenges, I will post the WoWhead link to a guide, like a page they made compiling all of the different consumables that are the best in slot, all of the different like cheese strat gear and like crazy weapons and on hit effects and all that good stuff if you do feel like you need an extra hand. But as I said, I did all of these with just like my baseline Mythic Plus gear. So with all that said, let's jump into the fight. So I'll first jump into the talents that I ran. There are a few different ways that you can do it, but what I found worked best for me, in the first row, you can either take Master Poisoner or Elaborate Planning. Personally, I went for Elaborate Planning. A few people do take Master Poisoner because it not only increases the damage of your poisons, of which you're going to be poisoning 3 targets, but also it increases their non-damaging components by 20% as well. And as you can see later on, we're going to be taking Leeching Poison, so that's just going to give us a bit of sustain and self-healing. You do take a lot of damage in this fight, so that can be useful. So I think a few people take Master Poisoner to amp up their Leeching Poison, but also do poison damage. Personally, I went for Elaborate Planning because it's 10% damage on everything every time you use a finisher. You're going to be using a lot of finishers because you're going to have a lot of energy. You're going to have a lot of energy because you're going to have Rupture on a lot of targets who are bleeding and poisoned, right? Which is going to be giving you energy through your Venomous Wounds passive. So I just saw the extra 10% damage on everything as being better than the 30% damage on just my poisons, right? Because that's also going to be amping up my damage through my Subterfuge and my Garrotes and things like that. As you can see, we're taking Subterfuge. So basically, just triple Garrote on pull, and every time vanishes up, you just vanish and triple Garrote them. It just does a lot of extra damage. You do need quite a lot of DPS for this fight. I would try and aim for about 1.2k DPS if you can, or higher. And because we're going to be taking Leeching Poison, that means that more damage equals more healing. And as I said, sustain is quite a big thing in here. In the level 30 row, we're going to be playing with Vigor. Pretty standard pick. It just does what it says on the tin, gives you more energy and regenerates it faster. So good when there's more targets available. Level 40, you can kind of take what you want here between Prey on the Weak or Internal Bleeding. Personally, I prefer Internal Bleeding because you can just kind of like kidney shot. You're going to need to kidney shot Jarl Velbrand during the fight. So it's just going to do a bit of extra damage on him. It's not a big deal. Prey on the Weak some people take, but that means that like when you kidney him, you're going to want to focus him. You can't always do that. Sometimes you need to run and do other mechanics. So I think Internal Bleeding is just something that it's just a bit of extra damage when you do throw your kidney shot out. Level 45, Alacrity, no contest there. It's just extra haste and extra damage. And in a level 50 row, Crimson Tempest. Firstly, it does tons of damage. You just need to watch out though using Crimson Tempest because sometimes you're going to have Sigryn in a blind and you don't want to be breaking the blind with Crimson Tempest or Fan of Knives. So just keep that in mind where you're positioning when you are using your Crimson Tempest. But I do think that it's the best pick overall. Gear-wise, as I said, I didn't really use any kind of like cheesy gear. As you can see here, I'm just using my normal Mythic Plus setup. Domination sockets, just normal sockets. I'm running the Vial of Putrefaction and the Decanter of Endless Howling, just because I thought maybe that would give me some extra healing. I'm running Sylvanas Daggers. As you can see, they're not super OP. They do a bit extra damage though, so that's always nice. I'm running Lightless Force enchants on them, which seems to do loads of damage, so I would recommend picking that up or temporarily switching to that if you can. But yeah, that's my damage breakdown. No crazy cheese gear or strats or anything like that. As you can see, Crimson Tempest doing big work, Garrotes as well, and yeah, just bleeds in general. So that's why I thought 10% on everything. All these 3 bleeds is better than just like an extra bit of poison damage, right? So jumping into the fight then, this is all one phase. It's just a repeating phase. It's loads of different abilities. It can get quite overwhelming. There is a lot going on at sometimes. So I feel like the best way for me to break it down is really to break down each individual boss who you'll be fighting all at the same time, kind of explain the mechanics, what the counter to each mechanic is, and then how I dealt with it. And then maybe at the end of the video or the later part, I might just like quickly preview kind of like highlights of my kill and talk through what I did in certain situations. So I've made this cheat sheet, as you can see on screen for you now, breaking down the 3 bosses and their various abilities. I've also put a little icon to show which CC works on each boss. So the Jarl, for example, can be kidney shotted or stunned. Sigryn can be blinded, and the Runeseer can be kicked. Now those are very important in how you're going to deal with their special abilities, as well as a few of maybe their not so special abilities. So I'll just explain each boss one by one, and then kind of like how you deal with each thing, right? So I'll start by talking about the Jarl. He's going to be doing melee damage. He will also sometimes stop in the middle of the room and just throw axes at you for about 20 to 30 seconds. These axes do a quite considerable amount of damage, and they move really unpredictably. So watch out for them. You don't want to be taking them to the face if you can avoid it. What I generally tended to do to avoid this mechanic was I would pull the remaining 2 bosses away from him while he did the axe toss and just try and, you know, happy feet between the axes and dodge those while I was keeping up damage on 2 bosses. And then as soon as he stopped, I went and put my bleeds back on him. Preferably you can keep your bleeds on him while he's doing that. But as long as you have a little bit of space between you and him, it makes it much easier to dodge the axes. He also has this blade storm ability that he does every now and then. It will take up kind of like half the room. For that, you just want to chuck a kidney shot on him to interrupt it. A really nice macro for this is, I'll put it on the screen for you now, but basically what it's going to do is use your kidney shot on the boss frame. I guess like the bosses have 3 frames. I'll use a similar one for Sigryn as well, but this one is basically just going to chuck a kidney shot on him, so you don't even need to switch target to him. As long as you're in range of him and you have combo points and you press kidney shot, you will just kidney shot the Jarl, because there's no reason that you'd ever kidney shot any of the other 2 because they are immune to stuns. And then I guess his kind of ultimate ability is he enrages himself for 20 seconds and he'll follow you around the room. He walks normal speed, I think, at the start of the fight, and then he gets slower as he gets lower HP, so it's easier to kite towards the end of the fight. But you will probably have like a crippling poison on him anyway. But basically, as a 20-second enrage, he really claps you if he does get in range. So what I do at the start of the enrage is I usually kidney shot him for like 6 seconds if possible. And then when that is running out, I'll use my evasion. And the evasion will probably be up for every other enrage. He does it more and more frequently the lower HP he gets, so it'll get harder throughout the fight. But yeah, a cheeky kidney into an evasion, especially if you've got other mechanics going on at the same time. You might need to use your evasion so that you can kind of like deal with the runes, for example, while he's chasing you down, because positionally he might be in the center of the room. So now on to Sigryn. She also does melee damage. She's kind of the main boss of the 3. She will spawn these green puddles on the ground every now and then. They're quite annoying. They do tend to get in the way of other mechanics that are going to overlap with them. For example, again, the runes that I'm going to talk about in a second. To kind of avoid these green puddles being placed in a weird spot, I tried when I could to kite the bosses around the edge of the room in a circle. Therefore, like, she's going to throw the green puddles where you are, which means they're going to be at the edge of the room, leaving the middle free for, you know, space when other mechanics are coming in. Every now and then she's going to spawn these walls of Valkyries. She has a really good voice line for this. So for me, for example, I played with game sounds and I turned up the dialogue on my game sounds so I could hear the voice cues. It was really useful for me to trigger me to turn and spin my camera and look where the Valkyries were, because sometimes a lot of other stuff can be going on at the same time. So what's going to happen is she's going to spawn a wall of Valkyries. There's going to be a gap in the wall. Basically, you just have to run over to the gap and they'll fly past you and you'll be safe. These Valkyries do almost one-shot you. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where you absolutely cannot make it to the hole in the wall, you can cloak the Valkyries. It's magic damage. But I would recommend that you save your cloak in general for kind of an oh shit moment, as the overlaps through this fight can get quite out of hand. Now, Sigryn's ultimate ability is called Blood of the Father. Basically, she's going to do like a 3-second wind up or cast time of this ability, and if she gets it off, she'll put a buff on herself, which will tick for 20 or 25 seconds. Pulsing AoE is pretty much a wipe mechanic. If it goes off and you don't blind her, she is going to wipe you. Now, you can either blind her after the cast goes off if you're slow, and it'll stop the damage from pulsing. But what's even better to do is to blind her during the cast. What that will do is actually put the ability on cooldown. and therefore you can break the blind again and re-bleed her and keep on doing damage to her. I'll give you another nice macro for this as well, and basically it's going to work the same as the kidney shot one, except it will put the blind onto Sigryn, so you don't need to mess around with any target swaps or anything like that. Because these bosses do have a shared health pool, it doesn't look like it because they all have different amounts of max HP, but they do take shared damage. By breaking her out of this blind and putting your bleeds back up on her, it will increase the amount of damage that you can just like sustainably put out, right? And you ideally want to be aiming for about 1.2k DPS throughout this fight. And then her last ability is just kind of an annoying one. She does this knockback every now and then. It's just really annoying. There's no counterplay to it. She'll just knock you around. Sometimes I remember it being really annoying. Every time I was doing the runes, like handling the runes from the Runeseer, she would knock me back. Kind of inconvenient, but you can't really play around it, so just be aware that that's a thing. And now onto the Runeseeker. He's basically a standard caster bloke. He will just spam shadow bolts at you. What you want to be doing is kicking these as often as you can, just to mitigate some damage on you. As I've been talking about these rune mechanics, he will occasionally put the set of 3 runes on the ground, these pink circles. Now those runes will be one small one, one medium-sized one, and one large one. And they will shrink in size, and when they get down to nothing, they will pop. And if one pops, it will wipe you. Again, these can be cloaked, so another reason to save your cloak as an oh shit button, just in case you can't make it to one of these runes before it pops. For example, they can overlap with the Valkyrie walls, so sometimes positionally you might actually not be able to easily go and stand on them. I'd recommend saving sprint for if there's a bad set of runes, but try and avoid using it if you can, because again, you might need to use it to position yourself for the Valkyrie walls or something like that. Now the Runeseer's ultimate ability is kind of this big shield he'll put on himself. He'll yell, "The power of my ancestors," or something like that. And he'll put this big shield on himself and he'll start this 18-second long cast, I think it is, 18 or 20 seconds. And basically you can't interrupt that cast until you've broken the shield. So you need to switch your damage onto the Runeseer, break the shield, and then kick it before he finishes the cast. And if he gets the shield off, like it blows up, the cast finishes, that will wipe you. Again, this is something that you can cloak if you do find yourself in that sticky situation. One thing also to note there is that if you do use your kick pretty much on cooldown to kick his shadow bolts, not only is that going to mitigate damage on you, but it's also going to help with positioning him easily because he's going to be following you around the room a lot closer. So it's easier to keep up your bleeds on all 3 targets and your Crimson Tempest and stuff like that. But the cast time of his big shield cast is actually longer than the cooldown of kick. So even if your kick was already on cooldown when you started casting it, the cast is so long that the kick will be back off cooldown before the end of the cast. So you don't need to worry about holding your kick for in case that shield is coming. You will get into a bit of a routine of like knowing which one's going to do their special soon, because it generally tends to rotate. Like the Jarl's always the first one, then Sigryn's the second, and then the Runeseer's the third, and it generally goes in like a rotation. As the fight goes on, they start casting them more and more frequently. So I'm just going to take you through my actual kill now to give you real life examples of everything that I just kind of talked to you and taught you about, I guess. I'll go through kind of like where I'm putting my DPS up. You can obviously just watch my rotation if that's the kind of thing that you're into. In general though, I'm going to try and keep up as many bleeds as I can on all the targets that I can, providing I fulfill my positional requirements first. So with the pull, I'm going to start with a garrote on Sigryn. I'm just going to spin my camera to the left. I'm going to kick and garrote the Runeseer so that he runs over to the Jarl. Now the Jarl's going to use hurling axes right off the bat, so he cannot be moved, so you do need to move the other 2 bosses over to him. Then I'm going to make sure I fan of knives to get the other targets poisoned, so that my garrote ticks will be giving me energy. I'm just going to start putting up as many ruptures as I can. I'm going to pop my Vendetta, going to pop my Shiv, try and dodge as many axes as I can before the Enrage comes in, which is like the first empowered mechanic that's going to happen. Then I'm going to try and kite them along the edge of the room to try and keep the middle of the room clear of green pools, because the next mechanic is going to be the runes. Now you are going to take quite a lot of damage on the pull, but it's okay because you're going to be doing a lot of damage too. So your leech will carry you through the hurling axes there. Just going to try and pop as many of the, pop the runes as quick as I can without using too much. I did chuck a kidney onto the Jarl there through the Enrage, and I also popped my evasion there. And then Sigryn is going to do her Blood of the Father. I put the blind onto her during the cast to interrupt it. As you can see, I move back over to her and I Crimson Tempest her back out. I'm taking a lot of damage here, but I get a golden orb, so that's really nice. And I'm just going to try and keep up my bleeds, my ruptures, and as many garrotes as I can on all these targets. So I'm getting a lot of sustain through these. Now, just trying my best to dodge the green axes, sorry, the green pools. And as you can see, I'm trying to hug the outside ring. I kind of envision the room as kind of a donut, I guess. You want to keep the middle of the donut free, and the outside with the green pools if you can. Now, the shield's coming down from the Runeseer now, so I'm switching my damage onto him and making sure that I break this shield. I did have to move away a little bit there because I was taking a lot of damage, but I shadow step back to kick. Position for the Valkyries, that's all good. And as soon as they're over, I'm pulling the bosses back together so that I can start getting my Crimson Tempests back up on them. Sometimes you do kind of like let your bleeds fall off a little bit. I'm going to chuck the Kidney Shot down on the Bladestorm during the wind up there so that he doesn't even get one tick. And then there goes Sigryn's cast, and I blind her mid again and immediately break her out. But yeah, sometimes your bleeds will be falling off, and that is okay. You know, it's a little bit of damage loss. That's fine as long as you are trying your best to keep them up. You might get energy stuff from time to time if you do let them drop off, but you want to be aiming for that 1.2k DPS target. And as you can see down in the bottom right, I am on that currently. I got kind of lucky with the room positioning and the Valkyrie wall kind of lining up there, so that's really, really nice. As you can see, like, I'm taking hurling axes right now, so I probably shouldn't be, you know, having two melee guys meleeing me or standing on the hurling axe curve while I'm getting meleeed. But sometimes that's just what you need to do to keep your damage high. Obviously also when you are bleeding all three targets, it's going to make the shield a lot easier as well, because they all share the health. So if you've got three targets bleeding, that shield is going to melt. I've had it sometimes where I've barely had I've barely done any focus damage onto the guy with the shield, and because I've already had all my breeds preemptively up, especially with something like a Vanish Subterfuge, then it's broken like almost immediately with pretty much no effort. I feel like I'm getting lucky here with these Valkyrie walls. I'm lining up with runes and stuff like that, but as you can see now, I have an enrage as I'm trying to pop the runes. So when he gets to me, I use my next evasion, and the Runeseer, as you can see, is kind of like spamming the runes out. I've kind of got the middle of the room a bit messy now with the green pools, and the Valkyrie wall comes in, but that one's not too hard to get to. I still do have my sprint and my shadow step. My damage is looking pretty good. I'm kind of burning them down right now. There goes Sigryn's next cast, and I blind her and immediately break her out once again. It's really, really important that you do try and do that. It's very, very kind of like it does make the difference with the damage. So if you're struggling with damage on this fight, there is an enrage when they get low. They start spamming all their abilities a lot more when they get lower. So sometimes you do need to kind of like focus and burn one down. I save my potion and my bloodlust for the end of the fight because of that, because I want to, once the Jarl's getting very low, I kidney shot him there when he was winding up the Bladestorm. When the Jarl's getting very low, he'll start spamming his enrage. When the Runeseer gets very low, he'll start spamming the shield, and obviously that kind of messes up your DPS as well, because you have to keep focusing a shield instead of a health pool. So once he gets very low, you can see here I've popped my bloodlust, I popped my potion, and I use an agility potion here, just a normal Shadowlands agility potion, because there's 3 targets. You could probably use the Unbridled Wrath if you wanted again, or Unbridled Fury I think it's called, to try and focus one down. But I'm just trying to burn him down before I get these like weird overlaps. I can see that I've got my cloak here in case that I couldn't break that shield in time. But I instead use it for these Valkyries. As you can see, I didn't even go for the hole in the Valkyrie wall there because I knew I had my cloak ready. So I just thought I would kind of like move them away, get them to a safe place. I think I was probably a bit scared at this point, but I did get the Jarl go down, and then I think I was like, this is a clean run, this should be fine. And I got lucky with the last wall of Valkyries there, and that is pretty much GG. I did get a shield right at the end and a Blood of the Father at the same time, so I chucked the blind on her using my macro and focused the shield, but that was enough to take them down. So that was it. That was the victory. Super clean kill. I think I enjoyed this one a lot. There's a lot more going on with this one at the same time, and it can get very overwhelming. As you can hear, I'm a little bit out of breath just from kind of like shoutcasting over it, but I will hopefully have the Outlaw one up in a couple days. That one should be a little bit quicker to make the video for, and I do have a Subtlety one up there. I'll leave it on the screen, so check that one out. I personally have done all 3, even though you only need to do 1 for the transmog. Feel free to subscribe. Make sure you do like the video, it would help me out a lot, and hopefully I'll see some of you guys over on the Twitch channel. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great day, and as always, peace.